G'day guys and girls out there in YouTube land, it's Doily coming at you from Seoul, South Korea, and today I want to talk to you about how to use your DAW or digital audio workstation in conjunction with some video audio conferencing software like probably Zoom is the main one, but there's others that you can use, and yeah, even FaceTime, maybe it would work alright with Google Hangs. Not sure, I haven't tried that one myself. But anyway, I want to talk about how to get that going and how to interface it properly so you can get some different levels of complexity going. So in my case, as a person who does online teaching and online musical collaborations, the most important scenario is to simply be able to move audio from your DAW into the call. So we're going to look at that, and then we're going to look at 3 more levels of complexity above that with what you can do. So what are you going to need? Number 1, you're going to need a DAW. I personally primarily use Live 11, but you could use Logic, Cubase, Bitwig, or any other audio software which has multi-channel outputs. Or for the lower level complexity, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, basically for the more complicated you want to get, the more control you're going to want to have of individual audio channels. So a DAW like Ableton Live 11, as I'm using, is completely perfect for that kind of situation. Okay, the next thing you're going to need is video conferencing software, and I'm going to focus on Zoom today, but I've used this to some degree of success with FaceTime, and I'm trying to think if there's any others that I've used it with. I've never got into Google Hangs, but I imagine it probably works at least on a similar basis as FaceTime. So anyway, if you're using some other software to do this kind of thing, let us know below, and the more information we all have, the better. So feel free to share. The next thing that you'll need is possibly the most critical piece of kit, and that is the software that enables virtual multi-channel audio routing. So like a virtual audio cable kind of software. So I'm using some software here called Loopback, but some other notable mentions are BlackHole and VB Cable. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this probably also does what you might want it to do. I've used it in the past, but I've removed it. I just brought it back on because I might give it a test run again today to see if it's worthy or unworthy. But in any case, they're the 3 things you need. So you need your DAW, you need your video audio conferencing software, and then you need a virtual audio cable solution. Loopback is a paid software. It's from a company called Rogue Amoeba. BlackHole is basically freeware, but the developer suggests a donation of $10 if you can afford it. If not, don't worry about it. And VB Cable also, I think it has 2 tiers. There's a free level where I think you can only get X amount of channels or something, and then there's another version. I'm not 100% sure about VB Cable. I actually downloaded it for a different purpose, but I'll discuss that later. So, as I was saying, we're going to look at some different levels of complexity with this. So okay, let's have a look at the first of 4 levels of complexity. So this first level is basically what I call simple multi-output device. Now, in Apple's audio MIDI setup, you have an option down here in the bottom left corner. Hit the little plus button and you can create an aggregate device, create a multi-output device, or connect AirPlay device. Okay, not useful. The last one, but the first one, aggregate devices and multi-output devices, are really useful. I use aggregate devices every day. Multi-output devices not so much, but they have their uses. So you can click on this and create a multi-output device. I've already clicked on it. And go back over to your Loopback software, and we'll get rid of this. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to hit plus to create a new virtual device, and it creates a default Loopback audio device. We can rename this. I'm going to call it Zoom. Okay, and that's just created a single stereo output channel. I'd call it more like a stereo throughput channel, but anyway, a stereo channel. And when we come back over to our multi-output device, we select two devices, and the audio is going to get funneled to both of them simultaneously. So the first device is whatever your primary audio interface is. So right now, I'm monitoring audio through my headphones, which are connected to the iConnect Audio 4. It's also got my speakers, my guitar, my microphone, a whole bunch of stuff connected to it, MIDI devices. Not that MIDI is audio, but anyway, that wants to be your primary device, and your secondary device wants to be the virtual audio cable software. So here we are, and I've just inserted Zoom, and you can put drift correction on for both of the devices. I don't think it matters too much, but yeah, I'm actually not really sure what difference that makes at all. But just try to make sure that they're the same sample rate. So that's 48,000 hertz, 48 kilohertz, and the ICA4 Plus, there she is hard set at 48 kilohertz. So your multi-output device has these two devices. Now you want to go into your DAW and you want to select your multi-output device as your output, and you can use whatever you want for your input, but probably, how to crash I should call this video how to crash live. Actually, we just encountered a bug in live, or maybe it's not a bug, but it's definitely a thing that happens. And that thing is that sometimes in the audio preferences of live, when you try to select a device that's anything other than the default, not default, but like the basic devices of your computer, i.e. the internal speakers and the internal microphone, you can bring live to its knees. So if I want to change this here, the first thing I need to do is select my MacBook Air microphone, and then I can select my interface. Okay, all right. And for the output, we're going to select multi-output device. You'll have the same potential problem here. You want to choose, first of all, whatever your default internal device is, and then you can select the other one. And if I hit the test tone here, we can see that there's a signal coming through. If I stop that, you can see the signal's gone. Okay. So now we can open a set. I'm going to choose something kind of like foolishly simple. And this is actually a little bit too complex, so I'm going to get rid of some of these things just to show you how very, very simple it is. Okay, so I've got this little loop. I'll turn that down a bit. And you can see that my voice is also coming into the session, and you should probably hear some phasing now because the audio is actually coming in at 2 points. There, I just turned it off. And so now both those devices can be seen at this point, right, in the Zoom virtual device. So that, as I was saying, is the simple multi-output device. And once you've got that running, you just want to go into your Zoom session and go into the audio settings, and it's already happening here. I've selected Zoom, that's this channel here that we just created for the microphone, and let me stop that. There we go. And we've also selected the same device that we were using as the primary interface, you can see here, as the output. So that just means whatever's coming through your Zoom call will be heard at this point, at this audio output. So you can hear what's happening in your DAW session, but you can also hear what's happening in Zoom. And Zoom is listening to what's happening in your DAW session via this sneaky little cable here. Okay. So I'm just going to shut down Zoom for a second. Now that's level 1 complexity complete. So let's have now a look at level 2 complexity. Level 2 complexity involves the use of an aggregate device. So I'm going to get rid of the devices that I'm not using as I go. Might crash some stuff along the way.
That's the simple multi-output device. If it has any drawback, it's that you may not have very strong control over individual channels. Well, that's what I was thinking anyway, but actually there's no real drawback to it. You know, that's it. It's really basic. It does the job. Any one of these solutions will do the job here. A BlackHole 2-channel device, a VB cable 2-channel device, they're all going to work. So that'll get you up and running. But what if you want to do something that's a little bit more complex?
So the next level of complexity is an aggregate device. And my definition of that device as seen over here is aggregate device X, or primary device, plus 2 channels. And the benefit of this is that it enables setting up a send channel in the DAW. And that is very useful. So let's have a look at how to do this. Now, here's one I created earlier. As you can see, it's got four mono channels, 2 stereo pairs in here. And for the first level, you only need 2. So I'm just going to delete this one here. Okay. And you'll notice over here that I've got this other little device selected, but we'll come back to that. That's not hugely important at this stage, but it can be very useful. And it's one of the reasons why I prefer Loopback over BlackHole and VB cable. Okay, so we've created this device here. I'm going to call it DAW Link Mini. Now let's head over to here, and I'm going to delete that multi-output device. Don't need that anymore. And here's another device that I created earlier. Now this is the aggregate device. Click Create Aggregate Device. And what happens is you get presented with all the devices available to you. Here, so you can name the device whatever you want. I've called it LBD Mini Rig because it's like the most simple kind of form of my rig. I want to select my iConnect again as the primary device, and you can see that I've already mapped all these channels with what they're functionally doing. And in addition to that, you want to choose the little device that you just created, the DAW Link Mini. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a slight bit of adjustment to these just to make it clearer for me, because it gets a bit confusing sometimes. Okay, so now I've got a 10-channel device. It's my audio interface plus a send. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to quit live again because I don't want it to lose registration of the audio channels. Well, I don't want it to not be able to register the audio channels. So I'm going to reboot it. Okay, and I'm going to need to select my audio devices again. Audio engine's off. Okay, now I'm going to be really careful, and I'm going to choose those devices again before I choose the proper one. So it's LBD Mini Rig. Okay, there we go. Now if we have a look at these devices here, I'm going to deactivate this one. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to relabel this one Zoom, left and right. I'm going to have to go back and change that later, but there it is. Okay, so let's open that set again. Okay, so basically now the way we're going to do this is we're going to create a return track and send different levels of each instrument or whatever to this device. So you can right click anywhere, or you can use this command here, keyboard command shortcut, and create a return track. On the return track, all you have to do is select Zoom. as the output. Okay, so keep in mind it's this guy here. Okay, so the audio is not passing through here. What could the problem be? I'm not sure. Let's quit live. It could be that some audio channel hasn't registered properly or something. Let's close audio MIDI setup and restart it. Just as far as I know, that doesn't actually do anything to the audio. It just kind of cleans up the channels here, but that looks right. So let's go back and start up live again. And check that this audio, okay, that's the input. We don't want the input, we want the output. Output is set to zoom. Okay, all right. If I set that, it should, okay, it's sending audio now. Okay, so I think it's a case of the previous, something just kind of going wrong when you're starting up the set. It happens occasionally. You got to test these things, and you got to be quite persistently consistent. Consistently just consistent with how you use them. Okay, so I think we're going to be good now. So there's our loopback track on the return, and that's got that going there. And we can see now, if I start that little loop again, and you can see my voice is coming in here, and these are now appearing here. Okay, perfect. So we're going to open up Zoom again. And in this case, we're going to basically follow the same rule where the speaker is going to be like the same as the primary audio monitoring device, and the microphone is going to be that channel. Okay, so you can see that as audio comes through the pass-through channel, that the audio is appearing here. I just turn the volume down there. If I turn it up, yeah, you can see it's coming through there. Okay, so another level of complexity done. Let's stop that. All right. Okay, so that's the second level of complexity. I should mention the benefit of this is that you now have the more of a choice about what you hear and what you send to the other, to your other caller participant. You can do that by changing the audio to settings in live here. So for example, if I don't want to hear my microphone when I'm speaking because the latency is bothering me, I can just send it to sends only, and now the participant's hearing it, but I don't have to hear it. And of course, there's that loop again. I'll probably want to hear that all the time because it's a virtual instrument. Same if I connect my guitar to the thing. I'm a guitar teacher. Yeah, I want to be able to hear the guitar. I also want the participant to be able to hear the guitar. So I can use the sends now, and that all works very nicely. So that's level 2 complexity complete. Okay, on to level 3 complexity. Now this is where things start to get a little more interesting. So I'm going to adjust this device a little bit. I'm going to restore the output channel so that I've now got 4. And you can see they're just going through 1, 2, 3, 4 in order. I have to do a quick adjustment. First of all, I'm going to quit live. Live is not going to be happy if I don't do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change these channels here back to NA. Now, the reason for this is that the key benefit of complexity level 3 is that you can, in addition to enabling a send to Zoom, you can also have a channel bringing audio from Zoom back into your DAW. Very useful if you want to record a session, for later production or something. But what that requires is that you have an input channel coming from Zoom into your device here or into your DAW, and you also have an output channel going to Zoom. Okay, so previously, because I was only using it as an output, I had these channels here allocated. I use the labels to keep an idea of where it's at. But if you're doing it now on this next level, you need to have them separated. So where are we? There we go. Let's go back to live. And this is where stuff really starts to get interesting. So I'd go back into my audio settings, and I'm going to be very careful. Oh, okay, it's got all the devices channels here. Okay, it's showing them all. This is probably going to be fine. Okay, so my input, is going to be Zoom now. So that's coming in here. And I've selected that, and the output is going to be this channel, and I'm going to change this back to NA because this is actually the way I would most commonly use it. Okay, so now if I send my test tone, we should see it coming in 3 and 4. Okay, that's good. We'll turn that off. When you run a test tone in live, it sends it to all the outputs, not just what you see at the master output. So like you'll probably be able to see that more clearly in the next level of complexity. So there's not really much more to do here other than just get our test set back on here. Now I'm going to change this to master. I'll leave that at send. I'm going to hit play on this, and so my speech and my voice should both be coming through on this channel now. Wow, they've stopped. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Okay. I don't know. Let's force quit live. Okay, so when I restart live, it's I want to recover my work. Okay. I like to get rid of these crash reports as I go. All right. Get rid of that. Okay. So now everything's exactly the same. Okay. The microphone audio is coming in. It's being sent to Zoom. We got it on the right channel. Yep. And the little synth loop thing is coming in, and it's being sent there as well. And if we come over here, we should be able to see channel 3 and 4 is active now. So that's basically the first part. In this set, the only real difference is that we now have another track here where we're allowing audio to come in from Zoom. I'm going to turn that down because I realize it could be quite annoying, but I also want you to be aware where the audio is moving. Okay, so I'm going to now flip back into Zoom. Okay, and in Zoom, we now want to set both of these to DAW Link Mini. Now, if I hit test speaker, we should get some action on this channel here. Okay, now I don't necessarily need to listen to that, as I can still be recording that without monitoring it. So this is great. Keep in mind that when you use both of these DAW to App Link Mini devices now, that you must have your DAW active for you to be able to hear what's happening in the phone call with your participant. If you don't have this channel active, you won't be able to hear anything. And there might be some other tricky ways you could get around that, but I don't know why you'd want to. In any case, you're going to be monitoring the audio from the participant now in your DAW session. Okay, so that's level 3 complexity. So over here, I've got that highlighted. Aggregate device X, primary device, in my case, I connect audio 4 plus 4 channels of audio. Now, I suppose one thing which is worth keeping in mind with the 4-channel thing, that if you're going to use BlackHole, you will have to use basically the 16-channel device so that you can get 4 independent channels, because you only get 2 with the BlackHole 2-channel device. Or if you are a tech nerd and you are a little more clever than I, you can go to the GitHub repository for BlackHole, and I believe that if you know how to do all stuff related to coding, you can take the source code from there, and you can actually output custom devices with different numbers of channels. So you could create a 4-channel device if you really wanted to, or if you know how to do that. I should mention that you have this audio input channel selection now in Zoom. I think that's a relatively new feature, which means that you can just select which channels the audio is actually coming from. So in this case, I would only need to be getting audio from channel 3 and 4, because channel 3 and 4 in the Zoom device is the one that's carrying all the audio out of the DAW into here. There's no potential for a double up with this one here, because there's nothing being, unless you plug something else in to this channel with a different application or something, you won't have any issue. But in any case, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to leave, in my case, I'm going to leave that as is for now. Now, I also wanted to point out one other useful way of doing things. This is why I prefer Loopback to the other solutions. And I have tested them, and they do work. Well, BlackHole definitely works. VB cable I've used for other things. I know that it works for those. I haven't used it for this specific application, but there's no reason why it shouldn't work. Okay, so what I want to demonstrate here is that instead, okay, so as I was saying, there could be a situation where you actually want to monitor in your headphones or speakers, whatever you're using as your monitor, but you also want the audio coming into your DAW, and maybe for some reason you don't want to monitor it here. I can't really exactly imagine what it would be, but it's a possibility. Okay, so if I set this device to my iConnect and I hit test speaker, right, I can hear that audio, but this audio channel is no longer getting the test signal, which is basically just the output from Zoom. Now, Loopback enables this neat little feature where you can hit the plus button here for sources, and you can choose applications as an audio source. So if you think about it, what is the audio source on 1 and 2 in this channel as I had it set before? It's actually Zoom. So if I select Zoom as the output point and I hit mute when capturing, now when I hit test speaker, the audio is coming in here. There we go. And you can play around with the mute when capturing. So if I unmute that, I'm now hearing it from this point, but I'm also hearing it through here at this point. So that might be overkill. This is probably the better way to go. But if you do need to hear it from those 2 separate points, you'll have to do it like that. Kill the mute when capturing, and like so. Okay, I'm not going to harp on that too much more. That's a neat feature. I'm going to deactivate that for now because that's not something that I use all the time, but it is useful to have that ability, and that's definitely something that you cannot do with BlackHole or VB cable. Okay, so that's level 3 complexity handled. Okay, so level 4 complexity is basically the same as level 3, but it's just on a grander scale. So let me just get back to basics here. So we're going to come back over here to our audio devices, and this is basically an exposition of my big audio rig. So because I do online teaching and sessions with other musicians where we're talking about things where I want to be able to like demonstrate or share information, I've set up this ultra mega kind of device here in Loopback, which I call the DAW/app link. And you can see there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I'm going to quickly just explain it all, but it's not all that complicated, it's just dense. So here's my primary audio device, audio aggregate device, and you can see that it's actually up until channel 12, it's identical to what we were just looking at. The only difference is I'm going to add in some additional audio devices. So just give me a second while I go and turn them on. They're on the other corner of the studio. So this is just to kind of give you an idea of how far you could take things, what degree of control you could establish. So you can see now I've got this 36 in, 34 out device, and it's got my primary interface with microphone, guitar input. It's got another hardware guitar device input. It's got 4 channels of iPad audio. Then I've got this virtual device where the first 4 channels are identical to this guy. Come back here. But then after that, what I've done is taken the next 12 channels and I've just set up a bunch of stereo pairs where I'm stealing audio from applications. So these are the kind of applications which I'll use typically in teaching and idea sharing. So I've got some transcription software here. There's video software transcribe. There's Amazing Slow Downer, same kind of thing. I've got Guitar Pro 8, so I can share audio from scores. I've got the music app, so I can play music as I'm listening to it in the native Apple Music app. And I've got Safari to share stuff from my browser, and a YouTube application which I made to share audio from YouTube. And the rest of the device here, as you can see, that's a duplicate of what was happening in this device here, that Zoom device. Okay, I'm not using it at this stage, but it's connecting into channel 1. You can see if I click on the cable, you should be able to see it connecting up here to channel 1 and 2. Anyway, maybe it's not very clear, but that's where it's going. And then channel 1, 2, 3, 4 are connecting up to 1, 2, 3, 4 as we saw in this other device. Exactly the same. Now the only difference is that this device is not currently allocated in live, and as such you're not seeing the audio move. But if I go in here and I change to big rig, okay, and because I'd already changed to that other what I was saying, kind of like internal device, and I haven't restarted live since then, I haven't changed any audio channel routing since then, this is going to grab all the channels. So I'll have a look in my settings here, and it looks like I've got everything in the right place. Yep, Zoom's coming in there. There's that dummy channel there, which is the output channel. Okay, Amazing Slow Downer, Guitar Pro 8, Music Safari, Transcribe, YouTube. There's my Axe Effects, SY1000. Okay, and the output channels, hardware sense, there's Zoom, 11 and 12. None of these other channels are actually important because I'm not sending any audio out to them. If I did, it might create a problem. I'd need to use separate channels anyway. Okay, and then there's the Axe Effects and the SY1000. Okay, so with all of that set, I can now open up my streaming template. No, don't need to save changes to that. And this will take just a minute to load up. once it does, you can see there's quite a bit going on here. So the key to it all is the Zoom return channel here. So you can see here's my desk mic. It's being sent to sends only, and it's coming through here. Okay, and so we should be able to see that is now coming in on 3 and 4. Okay, and the Zoom participant. I'll change these channels around. Yeah, I'll put that there. Okay, so now if I fire up Zoom, I'm going to do the same thing as we did before, where I'm just going to set both of these to the DAW app link. Right, there it is. Okay, so the audio is now coming in here, and if I... Whoa! Hello, what's going on there? That's not very pretty. Let's try that again. Something has gone wrong with the sample rate or something here. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of quick precautionary measures. I'm going to get rid of Mini and shut down live. Basically just going to restart. I am going to save that because those new channel selections are important. Okay, let's open that again. And one thing I don't know if I mentioned it before, but so you could see I was changing the order of the channels around there. One of the important things is when you're looking at Zoom, I was showing you before how you can select, specific input channels. Okay, in this case, we specifically want 3 and 4 because 3 and 4 is the send channel. Okay, but you don't have that option with the speaker channel. You can't tell it exactly where you want to send the audio. It defaults to whatever the first 2 channels on the selected device are. This is common across many audio applications. So by making sure that you allocate the first 2 channels to the input, hang on, get over there, to the input from Zoom, right, 9 and 10. What's going on? Where's my, oh, right, I shut down the audio thing before, didn't I? Let's open it up again. Yeah, so by making sure that those first 2 channels are allocated to the input from Zoom, you guarantee that you're basically going to get identical behavior from, whether you're using BlackHole or whether you're using Zoom. Whether you're using, with Zoom, you can do that cool thing. Sorry, not with Zoom. With Loopback, you can do that cool thing I was saying with this device. And you could, in theory, flip them around and change the, so that the input was coming to 3 and 4 and the output was going to 1 and 2. But why complicate matters? Why not just keep it as we kind of expect audio devices to perform, as, it's a kind of a limitation of them, I suppose, in a way, but it's also good to know that the limitation exists so we can work with it. So we're now going back to our DAW. Okay, and we just quickly double check that all our channels are in order. Yep, everything's fine there. So first of all, I'll fire off a test tone. You can see the test tone's getting sent through there. And there we go. So it's coming in on 3 and 4. Okay, bam. And it's going to be a matter of same thing in this session now. Okay, so if I hit test speaker, we should see some action on Zoom participant channel here. Yep, cool. Okay, and yeah, I don't know, what have we got? Synth rack, I'll just give it some, it's probably gonna be really loud. Okay, so that's coming in there from this channel 2. Just going to put that back to where it was. Okay, and the microphone's coming in here. It's being sent off there. I should probably mute that so I'm not getting the phasing. You've probably been listening to phasing for the last couple of minutes while I was ranting. Sorry about that. It does get quite confusing when you're managing so many audio channels at one time. And yeah, so what are the benefits of this? Like, basically, you can do all the same things that we did in the previous version, but we could potentially send audio to other places if you wanted to, or we can just like get a bunch of what have we got? App audio. We can get a bunch of different app sources for our audio. So, say for example, let's just open Amazing Slow Down. What was the last thing I was working on? Wardenclyffe Tower, Tokyo Dream, Alan Holdsworth. So there's audio from there. Okay, we can see it's coming in 5 and 6 here. And if I come over to here and I select it, okay, it's coming in here now. And I can send that off to Zoom to my participant. Now, I probably don't want to get copyright struck or anything with that, but for the purposes of demonstration, yeah, that's how it works. And you can, have all these different channels here. That's going to be really useful if you're wanting to have, master control over all of the audio that's happening in your session. Okay, like you can see here, like I've just got some clips and stuff. Well, there's just one there that I was using as an example the other day, and actually that just reminded me. You heard that started a click track, and one of my pet peeves, and I just figured out a solution for this last week. One of my pet peeves with live is that when you can use the Q out channel here to send your metronome audio to wherever you go. This one. You can use this to send audio, click track to your main out, which is great if you're recording or whatever. But if you want to send an independent click track to another channel, you've got a problem. So I found this really useful free app. It comes up as Tal Aviram, I think is the name. Anyway, here it is. Where's the about button? I had an about. That's the logo. TIG is its name. Tal Aviram, I don't know if that's a person or what. Seems like copyrights allocated to Michelangelo Nottoli, or someone. Anyway, this is a really cool metronome. It follows the clock in live, whatever time signature, whatever tempo you throw at it, it just sends out another click. So this means that you can now take your click and send it to, if I hit play, I can now send a click off to the Zoom participant and to myself, and it just gives you a bit more freedom with how you want to route it. So that's a really great little thing. I'll call it an extra tip. So that's level 4 complexity, and obviously, one of the great things too is that, let me turn off my guitar synthesizer. I think I had that set to no input. Okay. Whoa. This is interesting. What's going on here? I actually want to hear the synth rack, but what's interesting here is that for some reason my Axe effects, the channels have gone all whack. Okay, let's see. Let's have a quick look at this. Let's just make sure that the channels for the other devices are okay. Okay, so this is what's going on here. This device was previously a 14 channel, but I changed it to 16 so that it would operate in parallel with the BlackHole device. And it should work now, but it's not working. So what's going on? XFX, I can't hear you. It looks like the XFX hasn't registered when I launched the application for some reason. So I'm just going to quit live for a second. Now this isn't important anymore really, so I'm just going to quit that, and I'm going to go open live again, and I'm expecting that when I come into here and I launch that set, it should register. It should register my XFX, but it's not registering my XFX. Now, what could be the possible issue here? Okay, so I just fired down the XFX and I'm firing it back up, and I'm pretty sure, I'm actually surprised that it didn't crash live. That's exactly the kind of thing that would crash live. I'm just going to restart this here, and we'll try one more time. It's going to take a hot minute to load. Okay, back into the streaming template. This is very peculiar. Very peculiar. The XFX is not registering. Now, is that because the channels are not active? Yeah, right. Okay, so when I turned the XFX off, it killed access to these channels. Anything to do with the XFX. It should probably work now. Put these all back on. Nah, for whatever reason, the XFX is not registering audio. Well, that's why we also have some other plugins set up now. So I'm using a plugin now. I mean, part of the reason why, if I go back to the audio settings here, part of the reason why I've set up this more basic mini rig is because you can kind of get the same job done without all the bells and whistles of the super big rig with the external hardware devices. But I do quite like the sound of the XFX when it works, and the SY1000 is pretty fun for guitar synth stuff. So I'll have to figure out why my XFX has suddenly decided that it's not working. Unfortunately, I can't hard reset or reboot Core Audio when I'm doing a screen recording, because if I do that, it will kill the screen recording. So it'll kill the audio to the screen recording. So I'm not going to do that, but just sort of take my word for it that when you're doing stuff with these kind of complex audio routings, it's not uncommon for me to have to start live a couple of times when I kick it off. But once everything's registered and it's all working, and once you do a Core Audio reboot, you do that by, there's probably a terminal command to do that, but I just simply go into the activity monitor and hit Core Audio, type in Core Audio, and go in there, and I'll hit that and force quit. Like I'm saying, I'm not going to do that right now because I want to have a long and prosperous screen recording experience. But yeah, so we're out of there. So that's pretty much everything covered. Now, so yeah, it was interesting that when I started when I was in the middle of that screen recording before, suddenly my guitar stopped working. Well, here it is. It's working fine now. The other thing was that this plugin, S-Gear, decided to deregister itself for some reason. So I fixed that up. Okay, so there it is. This channel is working fine now. I don't know what was wrong with it before. Just for some bonus tips, here are some things which I thought I could share with you. So, creative uses of Loopback. You can do a few things which are really useful. So the first one that comes to mind is you can add a hardware device, app audio, or nested virtual device to your existing device. So for example, here I am now with this 16-channel device. One of the other devices that I have is this iOS monitor. I'll just activate that right now. What this device does, and I actually need to fix it up. What this device does is it takes audio from my iPad or my iPhone when they're in IDAM mode. Okay, now neither of them, okay, my phone is connected to the computer right now for my screen recording, right, for my webcam, because I'm using an external monitor with my MacBook. So I need to have something to do the camera part. So therefore I can't activate IDAM with this right now. It would be a disaster. Also, my iPad's not connected via USB, Lightning to USB, Lightning to USB-C, whatever you call it, on the computer. It's actually connected to an interface that has two audio inputs, including one for the iPad or an iPhone. So I'm not going to connect that to the computer either, but I use these sometimes when I want to just if I'm at work or something and I want to plug my phone in and charge it and listen to YouTube or something, I can put it into IDAM mode, and then I can watch the phone and the audio comes through the computer to my headphones, which would usually be these. But say if I want to just, I don't know, open up a synthesizer on, let's open up Animoog Z, and you're going to see, as soon as I hit a key, channel 5 and 6 light up and there's audio going through there. It would be entirely possible to add that entire iOS monitor into here as a new device. Now I'm going to get rid of those. Where is it? Now it's automatically defaulting to the first input, which I don't love, but that's just how it works. And if I connect these down to here, what you're going to see now, I've just added audio from my iPad into this big aggregate right there. And that's pretty useful. You can also stop that device from receiving, and I can still listen to the iPad, but it's just not getting funneled into the recording anymore. Okay, I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to delete that because I don't actually use it in that way. But I just think it's really useful to point that out. The nested devices are particularly powerful. Okay, another thing you can do. You can turn a single channel device into a dual mono device. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why would I want to do that? Okay, here's a problem you might run into. I've got this little single channel input guitar interface. Hopefully I didn't just kill everything, but because that audio, what do you call it? USB hub seems to get a bit overpowered sometimes. But if I want to take this little guy, is he in here now? Here we go, iRig HD2. Poor little iRig is a single channel device, and what that means what that means for him is that if I create an aggregate device, let me show you audio MIDI setup again. This is a weird little quirk of, I'm not sure if it's a quirk of Live, Ableton Live, or whether it's a quirk of macOS Core Audio. But if, for example, I've got my beautiful big aggregate device here and I want to add that little iRig in, I click on it and you can see some stuff just happened. Okay, first of all, it okay, this is clearly a macOS bug, right? The channels of the SY1000 just changed color to green and they linked with that final device. So it now thinks that the SY1000 is a 9 input, 8 output device, and that just happens to not actually be the SY1000, but in fact the iRig, and the iRig has 2 outputs. Okay, it's a bit weird. Okay, so on that level it looks weird. On this level, it kind of looks acceptable. Okay, we can see that's the iRig input on the top and that's the iRig output on the bottom. But what happens, and I'm just going to explain this, I won't actually demonstrate it because it's too much of a pain. But if I open Live, and I now, actually I may as well just open Live just to show you. If I open Live and we have a look at that audio device, okay, so there's nothing there now. Now it's a, all right, I'm just going to allocate that. That would be an N. Whoops, I want to go into Korean just now. Get out of Korean. These are N8. That's also NA because you can't use it anyway. Okay. So that seems like it should be fine, right? But for some reason, Live won't properly register that input. So if I take a cable, I just plug the cable in there and I'm tapping away on it. It's not registering it. Now you can see it's registering here in Loopback Audio, right? And I'll turn that off, right? But it's still not registering here. And there's just no rhyme or reason. I've never been able to get it to work properly. It seems like if you add a single channel device at the end of the chain, it won't detect that single channel. And if you try and put it at the front of the chain, of course, it messes up the order of the channels. So your nice, neat 8 in, 4 stereo channels now becomes 9 channels and everything's moved along one, and your channel 1 and 2 isn't accessible anymore. 3 and 4 is not accessible. It's now, 4 and 5 that you need to get, but it just doesn't work. So the solution to this, you can get a solution with, go away. You can get a solution here with Loopback Audio. So I've just created this device. I'm going to call it iRig HD2. It's now dual mono. Now I can come over here and, where is it? What did I call it again? Let's call it, just for clarity's sake. Yeah, so here I am in my device again, and now I can add this bad boy in here. Okay, and now when I go here, we can see the channels allocate correctly. And when I go into Live, back into Live, you can see the audio. I'm just tapping it with my finger rather than plugging in, but no, I don't want to recover my work. They really bother me. I always have to delete them immediately. Sorry about that. Okay, so now when I go into input, I should have this guy, and it should technically be left. I know, I'm just going to call it mono. The thing is, I'm actually, that's kind of obvious. I'm never going to use that channel anyway because it's a mono thing, but it's just by setting it up like that, it will now work. So when I go over here, choose that input, it's now getting a signal. Okay, so it just basically meant that I could, bring that little device to life, and that I can use it with other devices. So I had a problem years ago where I was using a really simple aggregate where for live gigs I wanted to use the iRig plus an iPhone in IDAM mode, or I think I was using, what was it called? Studio Mux at the time. I was using IDAM. Yeah, so I had it aggregated, so it was sort of something like, it looked something like, iRig was the first device, and then it was followed by an iPhone. And it would not work unless I used Loopback to basically reallocate the channels. You can do something similar with VB cable, because you can set up single virtual channels, but the only problem with VB cable is that it duplicates the input at the output, so you'll have one in, one out, rather than this device here, which is just a 2 in and 0 out. Okay, so that's the second kind of trick, I guess you could say. Okay, the third trick that comes to mind is, what have I written down here? Add devices that may suddenly disconnect to prevent aggregate crashing Ableton Live sets. Okay, if you've used Ableton Live to any great extent, you will be aware of the problem that you're in live, everything's going along fine, and for some reason or another, maybe you bump a USB cable, or you pull a cable on a guitar or something that slightly jiggles your interface, and next thing you know, your session crashes because the slightest adjustment to a USB connection while live is running is enough to crash it. Now, I've talked about this on forums, and people have indicated basically that I must be a complete idiot to or have something happen to my interface. But things happen when you're working with audio. Like, there's a lot of moving parts, things can happen. Of course, in the best case scenario, you're going to have everything gaffer taped, and bolted down. But it happens sometimes that things move. So and the other thing is, as I was mentioning earlier, when I was talking about that device that was an iRig plus an iPhone using IDAM, the USB connections between a phone, an iPhone, and a Mac computer are tenuous at the best. I was using a 2015 MacBook Pro at the time, and I could breathe on that thing, and the phone would just stop. The USB would disconnect. Or more so than the phone was the iPad. If I connected an iPad to that computer on a standard length cable, it was it would sometimes go into charging, starting, stopping loops. I could never really find a solution other than to completely kill the charging mode. There was some terminal command that I found somewhere somewhere online that enabled me to keep my iPad connected. It wouldn't charge, but it would just maintain a solid connection. The battery on iPads can run out pretty quickly when you're doing audio stuff, so you kind of would like it to be charging while it's connected to your computer. But anyway, my point is that it is pretty easy for these things to break. And if you're using a regular aggregate device, say if I were to connect my iPad to the computer now, and I said, okay, I want to create an aggregate device, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the iRig as the primary input. There we go, I've got my 2-channel input, and I want to have my iPad. Well, I haven't got my iPad connected, and it's a bit of a pain to do at the moment, but let's do it virtually. Let's say, and I want to connect my iOS monitor. Okay, so that's what it would look like. I'd also have to add an output device. Maybe I wouldn't have to add an output device here. I can add a separate output device in my DAW. I just need something to aggregate the inputs so I can see them all inside the DAW. So there they are. Now, if I breathe on my iPad and it decides that it doesn't want to connect anymore, it's going to drop the connection here and it's going to crash live. You don't want that happening while you're performing, and you don't even want that happening while you're sitting at your desk doing a session or recording or whatever you're doing, you know. So this is actually a great way to deal with that. So that device that I showed you before, iOS monitor, you can take this and you can take this and you can basically aggregate these devices, and no matter what happens, if I disconnect this right now, I'm not actually using it in the DAW at the moment, but if I do that, the channel remains live. It's just that the input doesn't pass through. So it's not going to die unless something happens to Loopback at like a operational level, and that has never ever happened to me. I've never ever had any problem like that with Loopback. So that's like the third creative use. You can use it to bypass some issues if you have devices that are a bit finicky and cause live to crash. You might introduce a hair of latency. I think that latency has got shorter over the years with the updates to this software. It's really, really good. So that's why I choose Loopback over BlackHole or VB Cable. But as I was saying, these will all get you across the line. It's really up to you. You can even do stuff like this with BlackHole. It's just that, as I was saying before, about how most applications automatically choose the first two channels to output audio to. Well, you'll just get multiple audio inputs on the same channel. There's no harm with that. And if you can control the audio of those at a source level, like in YouTube, you can control the volume slider on below the video, you should be able to surpass all problems with that. So that basically covers pretty much everything. Couple more things that I want to point out about Loopback, because they can be a bit confusing, and I've actually had a lot of problems with them, but you just need to know that these issues exist. So the first one, when the monitoring device, so say if I'm looking at right, so I've got this device here, right, and this is taking audio from my DAW and sending it to ScreenFlow. It's actually not sending it to ScreenFlow, it's just sending it to this channel, and I'm telling ScreenFlow I want you to listen from this point. Okay, so in the ScreenFlow settings, I'm telling it to listen to DAW ScreenFlow. I've also got a microphone connected in here, and that's sending audio into the same channel, just to kind of like simplify the process of recording for me. So when I shut down the DAW, I can still hear the microphone. But what I've written here, when the monitoring device, so here I've got this device here, is the same in your Loopback device, right here, as the output in the DAW session, you may not get the behavior you desire. But this is only an issue that I've noticed when I've been screen recording, and I'm not even sure if that's 100% correct, but it's just sometimes I want this to mute, and I'll hit the mute button and it won't mute. And it's not that this isn't in and of itself working, it's more that it becomes redundant because you're listening to it at the other endpoint anyway. So just be aware, that you have to be kind of careful with the monitors. I suppose what I'm saying, the first point, that's not really a bug. That's just something you need to be careful of. But this next point, I think, might actually be a bug. I'm not sure. Muting only seems to activate once you hit the I monitor. So this is specific again to screen recording. Muting only seems to activate once you hit the I monitor button. I call it like it's like the screen. So when you're in, I can't show you now because I'm using the software at this moment, but when you're using ScreenFlow, like you set up your input sources, like for your video inputs, camera inputs, audio inputs. And when you're doing that, next to each device, you can have multiple devices, however many you want. You get this little icon which looks like an eye, and that's kind of like your monitoring button. So if I just open ScreenFlow I can't see that my camera is actually, I can't see what my camera's seeing. But if I click on the little eye button, then it shows me, like, it basically does a live monitoring of whatever input's coming from the camera. It's the same with the audio devices. And if you have this set up, and then you're telling ScreenFlow that you want it to listen to this channel, right? And it's muted. It won't actually mute that track and capture the audio until you hit the monitor button. Okay, so you've got to be kind of aware that it's really difficult to demonstrate. But like I tested it before. I had Blue Cat Axiom. I just fired that up. So that's like a guitar amp and effects simulator. And I put it into this here. Just dropped it in here as another device, and it was connected all the same. Put it onto mute, and I can hear it perfectly coming through here until in the ScreenFlow monitoring settings, I tap that little button. And that doesn't really change anything other than what I'm seeing on the screen in ScreenFlow, but it affects the actual ability to like listen to this channel or something. So I know it's a bug. It's just something you got to be aware of. But yeah, so audio needs to be actively routed to a listening point for the mute function to activate. So that's pretty much it. I can't really think of anything else to add to this recording. That's pretty much everything I know about Loopback and about this kind of like audio routing. And there is one more method, which is a combination of using this software plus using Sound Source, whereby you can then tell it to take application. I don't know. Let's say take Ableton. So I've said to Sound Source. This is another Rogue Amoeba, same company that develops Loopback. I want you to take the audio from live and I want you to redirect it to wherever. And I'm not sure if you can do that from multiple instances of the app. I've never tried. No, you can't. Okay, but that's interesting. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think in a nutshell, I was just kind of getting to the point that you can use this Sound Source application to route audio to different places, and it can be quite useful. When I first got into doing this kind of like audio routing kind of quest, I was using Loopback and this guy in combination, and I think what I was doing there was using a multi-output device, and then so like I would set up like the whole thing basically as an aggregate with a single Loopback device in it. I'd open up Live, and I would have my have everything being sent over to a send channel. But then I would actually like use, I think I was using this guy to send the whole mix to a virtual audio cable that Zoom was listening to. And then I would send my own mix to a different, sub mix, like a return channel in Live. Now you can do it, and there might be some reasons why you want to do that, but I think that the 4 methods that I outlined today are actually the most practical and attainable and stable methods for getting the audio from your DAW to your Zoom call. So I hope you found this useful, and I can see that there could be potentially be a lot of questions, so I always answer questions. Feel free to put anything down in the comments below, and I will happily interact. And good luck with your musical interactions through Zoom. I had actually planned on showing you, like installing BlackHole and showing you that all these things could work in the same way, but it would take such a long time, and you can kind of just take my word for it. I've tested them. They work. I've particularly tested with the 2-channel and the 16-channel version, and up to like method 3, not a problem. They all worked fine. I'm sure you can do the same thing with VB cable if you want to get into doing that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, that was a really long video, well over an hour. There's some good information in there, I hope. Hopefully you find something useful in there, and if you find yourself coming up against any questions or issues when you start playing with these kind of things, feel free to pop a question in the comment section below, and I'll always do my absolute best to answer in a helpful manner. So, yeah, that's it. I'm going to leave you until the next video. God knows how long it'll be till that happens. But yeah, make a lot of music and share a lot of information about music and make a lot of friends through music, and take care of yourselves. Catch you later.